welcome to digital class. Today we will be dealing with subject social studies class 10. This is the unit 17th lesson in social studies. Independent India, first 30 years 1947 to 77. How India was during this 30 years under 3 prime ministers. In this lesson, students will learn the condition of India in the year 1947, soon after the Britishers have left India. They also learn that when India became free from Britain, there were numerous challenges to overcome. Students learn that despite many problems, India could retain democracy. Students learn that first challenges that the new nation faced was the demand for reorganization of states on the basis of language. Students, in this lesson, we will be learning that soon after India became independent, we were trying to make a new constitution for ourselves, and the Constituent Assembly was elected in the year 1946. Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the member and the chairperson of the Constituent Assembly, and soon after the Constituent Assembly was ready with the constitution, Dr. Ambedkar was elected as the drafting committee chairman, and after reading many constitutions, there were many provisions which were incorporated into a constitution. So, from 1950 onwards, we started following the constitution and India was ruled as per the constitution. Let us see what is that we are going to learn in this part 1 lesson. In this lesson, we will be learning about introduction, how India was during the early years of our independence, what was the condition, what challenges we had and what was the problems we have to overcome. And soon after the constitution came into existence in the year 1950, how our first general elections took place, and after that India was dominated by only one party, that was the Congress party, one party dominance in political system. And next we will be learning about demand for state reorganization, which was the major challenge before our leaders. Students, let us learn that how India was during the early years of independence. There was lot of social inequality, economic inequality. So, the first preference our Constituent Assembly leaders have given for a social change, economic change and political change. If you read the preamble, you will come to know what are the necessary things that the people have given in our constitution. This is how India became independent, how the newspapers have reported the birth of Indian freedom. India independent, British rule ends and Indian leaders are going to take up the challenge as leaders. Let us see in the introduction what was the main task for our leaders and how did they overcome. The main challenge before the leadership was the need to maintain unity and integrity. India is a large country, India is a huge nation with a large and vast population, diversification of languages and regional habits. To overcome this, we have to think that if at all we take any kind of step or a policy, it should not hamper the unity and integrity of the nation. So, leaders kept in mind that any kind of a new policy must not hamper the unity and integrity. Second one, bring about a social and economic transformation. Students, I told you during the British rule, India was having lot of poverty. During the British rule, India was having high poverty, or you can say that poverty was rampant and economic status was very low. During the British rule, when India became independent, soon after the British rule, there was lot of poverty and we could not meet the many challenges like illiteracy was rampant, unemployment was also high. So, to overcome this, the leaders have to take up new challenges, new policies. ensure the successful working of the democratic system. When Indians have adopted democratic system, the world was seeing whether democracy could work in India or not. Why? Because India is having different languages, different regions, different castes, whether India could retain democracy or not. So, this was the main point, whether if at all any new policy, if the constitution is going to implement a new, if the constitution is going to implement any new act, whether it would be satisfy the major needs of the people or not. Developmental goals, unity and integrity should not come at the cost of democracy. Already when I repeat, already when India became independent, lot of communal problems were going on. So, this should not come in the path of developmental goals. In this chapter, we will also examine 3 interrelated issues, including how the constitution and democracy worked and how India resolved some key issues of nation building. Students, let us see some of our social problems in India and how we could overcome them. When India became independent in the early days or the early years, India was having high poverty rate, illiteracy was high, population problem, gender discrimination, caste discrimination, etc. These were the major problems before our leaders. Okay, some of the economic problems in independent India were low per capita income, large dependence of population agriculture. Ours was an agrarian economy. So, we have to, in order to shift to industrialization, most of the people were not skilled. So, this was the major problem. Inequality in wealth, there was a large gap and there was a large division between the haves and have not. Rich were very less and poor were totally more. So, how to overcome this gap? Poor quality of human capital, we did not have a good skilled labor. Literacy rate was high, so we did not have a skilled labor. So, we had to overcome this. Most of the people were in agrarian economy, that is in agriculture, and in agriculture also there was lot of underemployment which we were facing, that is also known as disguised unemployment, lack of infrastructure, lack of access to basic amenities like water, shelter, etc. These were the major problems that we were facing in the early years of our independence. Let us see how we could overcome this and improve our standard of living. What did our leaders do in the beginning and how India was in the hands of the early prime ministers and how could we overcome problems. Students, this is the Constitution of India. This is the preamble of India. Preamble is the soul of the Constitution. Once you read the preamble, you will come to know what kind of a nature of government is adopted in that country and what is being implemented in that country, what kind of rights are given to the common people. Let us see the preamble. In the preamble, we have given importance to sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic and republic, and what kind of justice is being given and what kind of justice is being concentrated. Justice is given to first social sector, economic sector and political sector. So, equality also in the same way. So, equality, first equality is given to social sector, then economic sector and political sector. So, keeping in mind the society, the social and economic point, most of the policies were concentrated on these two sectors. Students, as soon as Constitution came into force from 26 January 1950, the leaders of India planned for the first general elections. Let us see how India could conduct the first general elections in the year 1951 to 52. It was a big task to conduct the elections, and democracy means conducting elections at regular intervals. And since India was facing lot of illiteracy, how elections were conducted, what steps were taken by the Election Commission of India, and how India could cope up with the first general elections. The first general elections in India were held from 25th October 1951 to 21st February 1952. Students, I will explain to you this, why it took so much time. Transportation was not developed and most of the people were not known the importance of elections. As soon as India became independent and republic, the constitution has given right to vote for all sections of people and people were quite happy with the right to vote. In many countries of the world, after a long struggle, they could attain or they could achieve the right to vote, but whereas in India in one go the people have got the right to vote. India adopted universal adult franchise. Universal means to all. Adult people means who attain the age of 21. Before it was 21, now it is 18. Franchise, right to vote at one go. Students, women in Switzerland got a right to vote very late. Even in Britain also, after a long struggle, they got the right to vote. In this way, India is very advanced and we should credit our constitution fathers, Constituent Assembly, for giving us right to vote. Due to social dimensions, the first elections were difficult. Why it was difficult on social grounds? Student, most of the women did not know the importance of right to vote. Many of them did not know how to read and write. Okay. Women were known after their husband's name or after their father's name. So, how to give them right to vote? This was the major criteria before the election commission. To overcome the problem of illiteracy, the election commission came up with the novel idea, new idea of having symbols from everyday life to represent political parties and candidates. They cannot read and write. So, how to vote? So, in order to make a change or to introduce a system, election commission introduced and gave some symbols which we use in day to day life to the political parties or to the persons who are contesting in the elections. This basic idea continues even today. The symbols are used even today. Now, you see Janata Party, you happen to see Congress Party, TDP, TRS, everyone has their own symbol. So, this idea is being continued till date or till today. In the first elections, each candidate had a separate ballot box with the symbol stuck outside. Every candidate who were contesting were having a separate ballot box. If I want to go and vote for a person, I have to select the box and I have to put my vote. But whereas now only one box is being kept and everyone will put their ballot papers in that box, but those days different ballot boxes were kept. The voter had only to drop their ballot paper in the box of their preferred candidate, and massive campaign to encourage the voters to go out and vote. People did not know the importance of voting. So, there was a massive campaigning to say that we have to go and vote. That is very, very important. Students, you can see women standing in a queue waiting for the chance to go inside and right to vote. How campaigning was done those days? There was no technology and big banners were being kept. This is a ballot box. You can see different ballot boxes used for different candidates, and you have to go inside the secret room and put your paper. This is how the first general elections were held independent India successfully. Students, on the screen you can see some of the symbols that were used in the year 1951 to 52. These are the symbols that you can see nowadays used by different national and regional parties. Okay. After the elections, it was now the turn that which party would come to power, which party is going to win the majority of the seats. Students, soon after the elections, it was very clear with the results that Congress party came with majority of the seats. Soon after the elections were over, the results have declared that Congress party has come with a massive majority of seats and defeating its other small regional and national parties. Indian National Congress won the first 3 general elections, reducing other participants to almost nothing. 1951 to 67, 3 general elections were conducted successfully and Congress party has won most of the seats in the Lok Sabha. Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister of India. Congress party formed the government in many of the states as well. It was not only at the center, in many states it was the Congress party which could rule and which formed the government. Many politicians and observers call this as Congress system. Students, nobody could challenge the Congress party and it was Congress party which ruled from 1951 to 67 and almost after that. So, most people described this era as Congress system as no other party could challenge this party. During the first general elections, other parties contested but were not able to win enough seats to challenge the Congress. Let us see this in form of a pie chart or a pie graph. This period to a large extent helped nurture democracy in its early years, allowing the establishment of a multi-party system based on a free and open competition. Till 1967, no other party could compete with Congress, but after 1967, Congress had a major setback because it could not win most of the seats in the other states due to various reasons. The democratic foundations laid by the freedom movements which enabled Indian politics to develop a multi-party democracy. India's experience was therefore very different from that of other colonial countries which got freedom around the same time like Indonesia, Pakistan, China, Nigeria and so on. There were many countries which got independence just like India, but their democratic system was different from our democratic system and we were successful in showing the world that democracy was nurtured and democracy was successfully working in India. On the screen you can see the pie graph showing how Congress was very successful in 1952 elections and in 1962 elections. The blue indicates Congress party and the pink, green, purple, yellow indicates other socialist Janata Dal, Swatantra parties. If one party dominates, you can say that it is undemocratic situation. There were many parties, but they could not challenge the Congress party till 1967. Many people describe that it was very undemocratic situation, no party could dominate, only Congress is dictating terms. But this happened to be different soon after 1967 when many new parties started to challenge the Congress party and Congress started to lose its ground after 1967. Now, let us see what was the first new challenge before our leaders, and this was a major challenge for the leaders because India was a huge country and it was a need for them to divide India into new states. And there was a new challenge before our leaders, that was India had to be divided into states and how they could be divided, how it could be divided and what was the major criteria for the division of India into states. The Constituent Assembly has adopted federalistic features and in this central government is going to be very powerful and the states will be under the central government. Now, on what criteria the states could be divided. So, is it the language or is it the population? Let us see how India was divided into different states and how this challenge was taken up by the Prime Minister Nehru. First challenge that the new nation faced was the demand for reorganization of states on the basis of language. So, in order to divide a state, there were many languages in India. So, is it the population criteria, taking the population into consideration, a state must be formed, or is it the language? So, in this way the central government has taken the principle of linguistic basis, and in this way they have formed the states. All the people speaking a language and living in contiguous area demanded to be organized under one state. Would agreeing to these demands help to build the unity or lead to the breaking of the country? So, most of our people were thinking that, the leaders were thinking that if at all we take language as a basis, everyone wants to prove and everyone wants to see that my language is more important than others. So, is it going to hamper the unity or integrity of the nation? This was the main criteria, and people were thinking that whether it is going to help or not. There was a fear that language reorganization would lead to breakdown of the country. Jawaharlal Nehru, first Prime Minister of India, was not opposed to linguistic states, but he only believed that this was not the time for it. It was in the year 1956, the people was feeling that India must be divided into different states, but whereas the Prime Minister thought that this was not the need of the hour, there are many other things that we should concentrate. State Reorganization Act in 1956. In August 1953, the States Reorganization Commission was appointed. Fazl Ali, K.M. Panikkar and Hridaynath Kunzru were appointed to address the issue of formation of states on the basis of the linguistic principle. Linguistic means language. Tribal languages were not taken into account, only languages spoken by dominant or powerful populations were considered. Students, there are only 22 languages which are officially considered by the Constitution. Other than these 222, there are many other languages, but they were not considered in the State Reorganization Act. Let us see some extra information on the screen and how states were created in different years. This is how India was in 51, 56, 75, 2000. In 2014, Telangana came into existence. 2019, Kashmir was included into Indian territory. Different years, different states have come into existence. Student, this is a detailed information of different states and the years in which they were formed. State Reorganization Act takes effect in the year 1956. Since then till 2019, this is the status of how Indian states have come into existence. The Constituent Assembly had called for social, economic and political justice and equality of status and opportunity. Social and economic change was at the top of agenda of modern India. There was inequality in India. In order to create a balance, lot of provisions have to be introduced, and in the next chapter we will be learning at what methods have been introduced to make equality in India. For a better understanding, read the text and try to do a small work or recapitulation at home. Make a list of states and union territories in India today. At present, how many states and union territories are there? Try to take an atlas and make a note of it. Second one, in your opinion, have we been able to achieve social equality? Think of instances that you would identify as examples of social equality and inequality. in your society where you find equality of status and where is that you find inequality. Make some lifelike situations and try to find out where you find in the society. And for better understanding, visit the website and solve the worksheet of SERT. Students, with some more subtopics and important topics, let us meet in the second session or part 2 of this lesson. Until then, have a good day.